Gunter Fischer. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today. We're going to be talking about the use of ecosystem-based adaptation to support improvement of city resiliency in the face of climate change. But that said, isn't it actually a contradiction in terms? I mean, after all, cities are the ultimate artificial environment and they don't have much of an ecosystem. So what are we really talking about here?
I think cities have to be seen as part of the surrounding environment. So cities normally are surrounded by coastal areas, by flatlands, by forests, by mountains. So in order to create resilience within the cities, one has to improve the environment. For example, coastal areas, especially mangroves, have been deforested or cut down in the past. So it's very important to restore them in order to provide protection from the sea, like tsunamis, but also floodings are buffered by wetlands, including mangroves. Also the mountains, when they're covered in forest, the forest acts as a sponge to take up the rainwater, and later on the water is released as clean drinking water, which is very important also for cities and urban environments. So that's what we call ecosystem services, and there's a number of ecosystem services provided by the natural environment, as I said, such as clean drinking water, soil erosion prevention, clean air, and so forth.
Can you give us some successful examples of how ecosystem services have been used to support urban resiliency?
Yes, there are a number of examples around the world. And one very impressive one is in North Sumatra, where local tribal people living in the forest get paid by urban people to preserve the forest in order to provide for provision of clean drinking water to the urban areas. So people realize that once you preserve the forest or the mountains, and people who live in the forest will guard the forest and protect it, then this is also a huge benefit for the urban areas. In other parts, this kind of system can be developed as well. I think I see a huge potential to develop such a system also in rural areas in southern China, also in Indochina, but also, of course, Philippines and other parts of Asia. Also, for example, another example is reforestation, it's called, in the Philippines. The Philippines suffered in the past from major deforestation and problems associated with deforestation, and now there are a number of community projects to replant the forest. And the forest is not replanted just for the sake of having a forest, but people use the forest. So it's a forest which I could call, or we could call, agroforestry system. So people can go in the forest, use it sustainably, and the forest will still provide the necessary ecosystem services like provision of clean drinking water and so forth.
While you say cities can't be isolated from their surrounding environments, in places like Beijing and Shanghai and Mumbai and other mega cities around Asia, isn't it really going to be quite hard to leverage the mechanisms that you've been talking about? Or are there opportunities within the cities that can be brought into play?
Well, I think cities, within the city, you can also adapt to climate change and to ecological challenges. I think there's a lot of potential of regreening the cities. So in many places, cities are more or less concrete jungles, but it's possible to use urban greening as a way of actually enhancing the environment for people as well as for wildlife. So there's a lot of option also that wildlife could actually recolonize cities. I'm not talking about tigers, I'm talking about like small birds and things which live in parks, which live in maybe green roofs, or vertical greening is another important aspect. So I think there's a lot of potential to regreen the cities again, also renaturate the waterways, remove the concrete channels, try to renaturalize the streams and rivers. This actually makes people also more happy, because when you walk out of your high-rise building and you see a lovely natural environment, it's much more pleasant than a concrete jungle.
Are there any cities in Asia which you regard as going in the right direction here in terms of ecosystem-based adaptation?
So Singapore for example, is going down this direction. They're trying to renaturalize a number of their waterways. They're creating large parks, so the estates are integrated with a green environment. So this makes people more healthier, happier, and therefore they also can contribute better in their jobs and daily life.
What do you think cities need to do to start aligning themselves with the opportunities for ecosystem-based adaptation?
I think it depends on the area we are talking about. So the situation in southern China is very different from Indochina or different from Southeast Asia. So in Southeast Asia, many places still got a lot of natural environment left. So for them, it's all about preserving what they got. Whereas here in southern China, a lot of the natural environment was lost in the past. Therefore, an effort has to be made to restore it, to bring the forest back, to renaturalize the waterways. And this at the end will also help the urban environment.
Gunter Fischer, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for the interview.